Good morning, everybody. That's right. Okay. Hello. My name is Rachel Plukas. I'm one of the worship associates here at the First Universalist Society in Franklin. It's a pleasure to see you all here today and also to introduce you to our guest minister today, who's Mary Margaret Earl, and she is a leader at the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, also known as but that's just kidding. It is a longstanding organization. We're going to hear more about it today. Their mission is to work across race and place to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. I'd like, as we're being called to worship here, to keep in mind the fact that the UU Urban Ministry is based in Boston, Massachusetts. It's one of our neighbors. And Boston this weekend, folks might have seen a big sculpture released with the embracing of hands. And Boston likes to claim Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King as we're kind of like the cradle for them. And isn't that wonderful? It is. But that big, beautiful symbol does not change the fact that Boston is still a deeply flawed community, and the UU Urban Ministry is doing extremely important work in that space. We at the City upon a Hill has some serious flaws when it comes to these issues, so let's focus in today. And as we sing and worship together, growth and change should be in our minds, not patting ourselves on the back, so keep that in mind. Much appreciated. That being said, let me find what I need, thank you. And while our bowl is ringing, I have one word that I want everyone to have in their minds as the sound builds and continues. We're all gonna enter into this space, the word growth.
The light broke today. It floods the morning through bare trees and an open sky. I am here to tell you two things. You are beloved. The universe that gave you birth now bathes you in air and oxygen and tells you this. And this. Your life matters. We are called forth from our beds and our journeys and our stories and our failures and our fears to rise into this day, to awaken to this opportunity, to greet and meet the holy now. How shall we welcome this moment? Come. The light floods into this space, into our hearts, into this community. Let us welcome this day. Let us begin. Let us worship together. I invite you in joining in singing our opening hymn, Morning Has Broken, number 38 in the hymnal.
And now for the lighting of the chalice, we have Diana coming to help us. Thank you. Every week, Unitarian Universalist churches all around the country light a candle in flame to join us together in worship. As we do that today, I'm again going to ask each and every one of us to have the word change brought into our minds and into our space and held there. Thank you. And now you may rise or stay seated as we sing our unison affirmation. Here we go.
Good morning. My name is Diana Tesney, and I am the Director of Religious Education here at the First Universalist Society in Franklin. And I would like to invite the children, if they would like to come down to the front here to just sort of be here for the children's story. They may, or they don't have to. It is fine. I can see you all where you are. So you can either sit here in this row or maybe here, or you can even sit on the floor. It's up to you. Oh my goodness, it's so nice to see so many of you here today. I always wonder when it's Martin Luther King holiday if I'm going to see lots of children or not. So it's great to see you here today. So Rachel brought up two words, growth and change, and I was thinking today about the fact that even though it is winter, it's not too soon to start thinking about our gardens, right? How many of you plant a garden in your house? Oh, good. Adults can raise their hands too. All right. So what does a plant need in order to grow strong? What does it need? It needs water. Good. What else does it need, Magnolia? Soil to support it. Yes. Sunlight. Good. What else does it need? Zoe, you know something it needs? Lots of love and care. Yeah, that's important too. Well, all of those things are important, but the thing I wanted to talk about today is the sun. And I'm going to go on a little journey to tell you a story, and then we're going to come back to this idea of the sun. So yesterday I was talking to my sister who lives in California, and we were talking about my nephew, her son, Max. And Max, since he was a little boy, was a very active person. Like as a toddler, you had to run to keep up with Max. He was the kind of person that loved to learn about the world through his body, through what he was doing. So it was no surprise to any of us that he turned out to be an athlete. He plays water polo, he plays ice hockey, he was a lifeguard last summer, he is thinking of joining the Coast Guard. And after a couple of years of high school of kind of trying to find what he was really interested in, he has now suddenly become very interested and excited in building a very strong and healthy body for himself. He's eating well, he's getting up and going to the gym every day, he's running every day, super motivated to do this, to be strong and healthy. And my sister, his mom, asked him, Max, what was it that made you suddenly decide to really strive for this, to really, not just to be kind of healthy, but really strong and healthy? And he said, I heard a story about a person, a young man like myself, who had always struggled with his body. He had been ill as a child a lot, so he wasn't very strong, and he wasn't very healthy, and he didn't eat well, and he didn't sleep well, and he didn't exercise, and he decided, I'm going to change all that. And now he's very strong and healthy, and an athlete, and he teaches other people about how they can be strong and healthy. And Max said, I thought, wow, that's so inspiring. I want to do that too. He said it was like I just wanted to be like that. And my sister said, oh, wow, that's so great. It's sort of like when sometimes people hear a beautiful piano piece. Somebody plays the piano and you think, oh, I want to be like that. Or you see somebody sing a song and think, I want to be like that too. I'm going to try to be a singer. Or you see a beautiful painting. Or you see somebody who can solve a really complicated math problem or is into science and you think, I can do that too. I want to do that. And my nephew said, maybe, but what I'm interested in is really the most important thing. Like all those things, he'd never thought about that before. He never thought, oh, other things light other people up, but for me, this is my thing. After we hung up the phone, I thought, for Max, this idea of making himself strong and healthy it was like the person who inspired him was like a sun, wasn't it? It was like there was somebody shining out in the world, doing their thing, and it lit something up in Max and made him think, that is something I want to aspire to be like. As part of our Unitarian Universalist faith, one of the things we really look to is inspiring men and women who are doing amazing things to make the world a better place, like Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who we're celebrating tomorrow. He's kind of like a sun. He was brave, he was strong, he was so articulate. As a writer, whenever I read any of his speeches, I'm sort of blown away by how well they're organized and how beautifully written they are, right? That inspires something in me. But we can all be inspired by people like Martin Luther King Jr., and even just ordinary people in our lives who do things that cause us to say, wow, that was amazing. I really wish I could be like that. Maybe I can be. Maybe I can be like a garden reaching out towards the sun. Please join me in singing the children out to their classes.
I invite us to enter together into a time of prayer and meditation. I invite us to breathe in and exhale and come fully into this place and this sacred moment together. Creative, generative presence that moves through all things at all times and that surrounds us in this moment. We bring so much into this space. Even the most blessed humans come with personal struggles. We all bring our own journeys and all we're working through. We ask that you help us to feel your creative and loving presence. And we lift up to you the struggle of physical pain and the gift of relief. We lift up mental and spiritual struggle and relief. We lift up the sadness of the loss of loved ones, sometimes at the end of a long and full life, and sometimes too soon, but all of which feel like loss. We lift up to the joys that we bring into these doors. We bring friendship and gratitude for those relationships. We lift up gratitude for long partnership, gratitude for health, gratitude for the beautiful children in this congregation. And we ask that all these things be blessed. And all of this we lift up in hope and in faith as we enter into a time of shared silence. Amen.
Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes, I know. 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 Justice is coming. Justice is coming. Justice is coming. Oh yes, I know. Justice is coming. Justice is coming. Justice is coming. Oh yes, I know. 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 Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know.
And it is my privilege this morning to invite our offering. The offering will benefit the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, a social justice organization based in the Roxbury neighborhood of Boston that has served the community for nearly 200 years. They envision a greater Boston where all people live with freedom and dignity and have equitable access to resources and the opportunity to shape the present and the future. 3 of their current focuses are safer shelter and workforce development programming for survivors of domestic violence, academic enrichment for Boston area youth of color, and arts and humanities programming grounded in a social justice message that amplifies artists and historians of color in their neighborhood. For more information on their really important and vital work, you can go to their website, which is uuum.org. This morning, you can make a donation by going to our website, fusf.org, and clicking Give, and then clicking Tithely. If you're making a contribution in this way, please select Plate and cover fees if you're able. You can drop a check in the mail to our post office box, which is available on our website. And if you're with us in the meeting house this morning, online giving is also an option using your phone, or you can drop your donation in the offering plates as they are passed around. Thank you so much in advance for your generosity.
All right. Today's reading is from a book that a lot of us might be familiar with. It's called White Fragility. Anybody had the time to read that book yet? If you have not, you'll also be supporting the Unitarian Universalist community. It's published by Beacon Press, which is something I noticed right away when I saw this book. That publication is something, or that organization is closely associated with the Unitarian Universalist Church. It produces fabulous books of all different varieties. White Fragility is one of them. So learn and support the UUs. Read that book. This is from it here, written by Robin DiAngelo. African-American scholar and filmmaker Omowale Akintunde says, racism is a systemic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically almost embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality. For most whites, however, racism is like murder. The concept exists, but someone has to commit it in order for it to happen. This limited view of such a multi-layered syndrome cultivates the sinister nature of racism, and in fact, it perpetuates racist phenomenon rather than eradicates them. The good-bad frame is a false dichotomy. All people hold prejudices, especially across racial lines in a society deeply divided by race. I can be told that everyone is equal by my parents. I can have friends of color, and I may not tell racist jokes. However, I am still affected by the forces of racism as a member of a society in which racism is the bedrock. I will still be seen as a white, treated as a white, and experience life as a white person. My identity, personality, my interests, and investments will develop from a white perspective. I will have a white worldview and a white frame of reference, and it profoundly shapes us. If we want to challenge this construct, we must make an honest accounting of how it is manifest in our own lives and in the society around us. We must manifest it in our own lives and in the society around us.
Good morning. So this season, with its cold and a little bit of snow and its sometimes gray skies, is the time that our gardens sleep. It's also the time when dreams of our gardens begin. The seed catalogs arrive, and we have shaken off the fatigue from the end of last gardening season with that heat that we had, and at the end of the year of pulling weeds and eventually putting our garden beds to sleep. Now we can again begin to imagine the possibilities. What might we plant come spring? We might sketch the rows in our vegetable patch and imagine the annual flowers that we'll plant. So I want to ask again, I know Diana did, but can I see the hands? Any gardeners here? So quite a few gardeners. So I've been a gardener since I was 11. And I went into the backyard and I turned over some dirt and planted some carrots. I planted them too closely, never thinned them, and they sort of emerged as these gargantuan bulbs with all these spindly carrot legs. So I've continued over many years to dig in the soil, plant seeds, grow vegetables, but always a somewhat impatient and impulsive gardener. Are there any impatient and impulsive gardeners? Yeah, I feel you. So last winter, I decided to slow down and deepen my gardening practice, and I enrolled in a Master Gardener certification program. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't drawn to the idea of being a master gardener, an expert holding this impressive knowledge. And instead it was like this door was opened into not mastery, but to the vastness of all that I don't know. And what I earned my certification in is the certification of knowing all that I don't know, that I formerly didn't know, that I didn't know, and in fact, I will never fully know, and that's what I earned my certification in. So instead of tips on fertilizing tomatoes, was this world of what it meant to tend to the earth right around me, from the value of native plants to the danger of invasive plant species to how rain flows off our roof, down in our gutters, and if it hits our driveway, will flow into the stormwater and pollute the bay. So the thing that I most clearly learned in my master gardening course is that if master gardener means being an expert, then I will never be one. I will always be trying and failing and trying again. And that is just what it feels like in my work at the Urban Ministry. It is just what it feels like to do the work of racial justice, to begin a journey that showed me far more than I ever imagined, that I will never be an expert in, and that's more essential than I initially understood. And it's good to be here this morning to share some of that journey with you. 46 Unitarian Universalist congregations around Greater Boston are members of the UU Urban Ministry, and we are about a 190-year-old nonprofit that was founded by the Reverend Joseph Tuckerman, a Unitarian clergyman. Reverend Tuckerman was committed to listening to those who were oppressed and to educating privileged Bostonians about poverty and the injustice that created that poverty. He became known as a father of modern social work. He merged the justice efforts of Unitarian congregations in Boston, and the Urban Ministry's member congregations have been central to its work ever since. Over time, we've done many things: built elder housing, created an Asian-appropriate food pantry, had a free legal clinic. In 1976, one of the Urban Ministry's member congregations, First Church in Roxbury, folded. The church had been founded in Roxbury in the 1600s by the Puritans, and the congregation worshiped there through the centuries. Roxbury, in time, became an affluent white Boston suburb. But by the 1970s, the urban and suburban landscapes were changing, and Roxbury became the heart of Boston's African American community. Throughout the decades in Boston, government-sanctioned covenant restrictions, redlining, and racist FHA and HUD policies sparked an exodus of white people from the city to the suburbs, while African Americans could only find housing in places like Roxbury, where the housing stock was older, where banks refused home improvement loans, and where the government disinvested. It was in that context that the congregation of First Church Roxbury dwindled. So First Church Roxbury's last members decided to close, and they bequeathed their property and historic buildings, which included Boston's oldest surviving wood frame church building and a nearby parish hall on an abundant green space overlooking the Boston skyline. They bequeathed that to the Urban Ministry. And that's where I arrived at the Urban Ministry when I came 8 years ago. Our programs then included a domestic violence shelter, youth programming, weekend activities for young children. But beneath that array of programs pulsed something else. It was the work of confronting racism in Greater Boston. Our location cried out for it. That wasn't what I signed up for, though. On my first week serving at the Urban Ministry, the killers of Michael Brown were not indicted. Michael Brown, as some of you may recall, was an African-American youth, 18 years old, who was shot and killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. That week, the staff of the Urban Ministry came to me and they asked me to make a public statement on the death of Michael Brown and on the fact that the officers who killed him were not held accountable. I remember that evening sitting in my office, nervous. I lit a candle and I breathed. I didn't want to make a statement because I was new and because I didn't know what to think about the killing of Michael Brown. And I didn't know how to talk about racism, and that wasn't the work that I had come to do. I came to run programs to help people. That's what I came to do. But what I was called to do was a whole other matter. The urban ministry was given this extraordinary gift of location, one we are called to live into. We are grounded in this amazing community of Roxbury. Its story tells the national story of racism, of urban renewal and segregation. And it also tells the story of the resilience of the Black community, of Black community organizing and resistance and cultural richness. And we are encircled by communities and neighborhoods also shaped by racism in reverse, shaped by policies that have given benefits to people who are white, policies that have kept these neighborhoods white by design and that have Unitarian Universalist congregations in the center of them, congregations also called to dismantle racism and that have the power to make change. This is an extraordinary opportunity for our faith to do the work of dismantling racism and real justice. Over time, this work at the intersection of communities has cured me of my reluctance to deal with race. I learn daily about the history of racism and how racism is foundational in this country, and it shows up in every single system. It is the root cause of enormous suffering, from the racial wealth gap to health disparities to the heart of the prison industrial complex to the reasons our communities are so segregated. Here are a few of the measures of the impact of racism from the Brookings Institute. 1 in 3 Black men born in 2001 will spend time in prison in their lifetime. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, the juvenile justice system confines Black youth at 4 times the rate of white youth. 1 in 3 Black families have 0 or negative wealth. Many of us by now have heard the statistic from the Federal Reserve Bank that showed that in Boston, white Bostonians have a net worth, which means your assets minus your debts, of $247,000, and Black Bostonians have a net worth of $8. And I'm not misstating that, it's $8. In the United States, 1 in 3 Black children live in poverty, 3 times as likely as white children. 1 in 7 Black children suffer from asthma, and according to the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, Black Americans are 3 times as likely to die of asthma, just one example of a health indicator. In fact, the average lifespan in Roxbury is 30 years less than it is in Whiteback Bay, which is 1 mile away. Meanwhile, white people continue to hold most of the power, control, and resources. Robin DiAngelo, in the book White Fragility that you heard from earlier, gives these examples from 2016, 2017, which might have changed slightly in this year, but not dramatically. Here are her examples. The 10 richest Americans are 100% white. U.S. Congress, 90% white. U.S. governors, 96% white. Top military advisors, 100% white. People who decide what TV shows we see, 93% white. People who decide which books we read, 90% white. People who decide what news is covered, 85% white. Teachers, 82% white. Full-time college professors, 84% white. This is the world that we move in, where white people hold power and control of the systems that still benefit and reflect us and that disadvantage Black Americans. A year and a half ago, the Urban Ministry adopted a new mission that faces that reality. We committed to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. We know that we can't alone dismantle racism in Greater Boston, but we can use our strengths to work our patch of Greater Boston. Since adopting our new mission, we've been wrestling with how to now live into it, what programs and work to change, to begin, to reshape. It is hard and messy work. It takes trying and learning and rolling up our sleeves. And the lessons from the garden are those that I take into this work too. And here are some of those lessons. Lesson 1, test the soil. That is, what is in this soil? What's our history? What is beneath our feet? The Urban Ministry is committed to examining our history, the inherited history of First Church Roxbury and the history of the Urban Ministry. We've engaged a researcher to look into the history of enslavers and the enslaved connected to First Church Roxbury congregation. He's completed a draft of his research, which shows a depth of enslavement related to the church with even its very first minister, an enslaver. We'll share those findings at a public convening next month at the Urban Ministry. This morning I shared the history of how we inherited our historic campus by white flight in 1976 because it's important to name how we inherited this space in the heart of Roxbury. It's part of our legacy. We need, too, to look more closely at the Urban Ministry as an historically white organization, to look at our story and our mistakes. We all need to do this work. In D'Angelo's book, we heard from African-American scholar Omowale Okuntunde, and I'll read again those words, quote, "Racism is a systemic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality. But for white people, D'Angelo says, it's invisible, like water. We see race as something that's part of a Black community like Roxbury, but not necessarily as part of our white communities and history. And our work is to learn to see that water in which we are swimming." D'Angelo writes, quote, "Predominantly white neighborhoods are not outside of race. They are teeming with race," end quote. One way to see that water is in telling and holding up the histories that underpin our churches, our communities, our institutions. 2, fix the soil. At the Urban Ministry, we commit to change from within. After the murder of George Floyd, the Urban Ministry made some commitments that we adhere to. One was researching our history, and another is ensuring greater representation of people of color on our board. One of the board members who was part of that process was somebody you know, Reverend Dave Egan, who's actually a member of our board, who's working actively with our board to recruit more community members of color onto the board. We want our board to look like the communities that we partner with, both UUs, many of whom are white, former program participants, mostly people of color, and Roxbury community members of color. Today, 6 of 15 board members are people of color, and I hope that this time next year it will be nearer to half. We've diversified our staff leadership and are working to recruit volunteers of color so that at every level there is shared power, because without shared power, injustice persists. Fix the soil. Lesson 3 from the garden. This should be obvious, but some of you will recognize that it's something we all need to work on. Plant plants where they should be planted. For years, I planted plants where I thought they would look good. You feel me. I didn't pay attention to the direction, the shade, the wind, and that's why my sun-loving lilac bush got planted right below this large, shady, leafy tree. In just the same way, we cannot create programs based on what staff or congregations think sound good to do in Roxbury. We need to hear what the community wants. So this past summer, we convened focus groups of Roxbury business owners to ask how we can partner in closing the racial wealth gap. That information is shaping a pilot project that we hope to launch this year to match pro bono skills from member congregations and match them with Black-owned businesses seeking to grow. We've been meeting with Roxbury nonprofits to see how they want to partner with Unitarian Universalist congregations. In the summer, for example, City Life, Vita Urbana, which protects the right of tenants in Black neighborhoods who are facing eviction because of gentrification. They came to us and asked to help with a simple mailing, and Unitarian Universalists from some of our congregations came in to undertake a mailing to let more than 1,000 tenants know their rights. We need to listen and listen more and listen more. There are wonderful opportunities to plant the right programs when we do. Lesson 4, pull weeds early. Over time, we have faced the legacy of well-intentioned but sometimes clumsy people who are white, like me, who are seeking to do work in a Black community. I once met with a supporter of the urban ministry who said in passing to me why he liked his neighborhood. It was in the suburbs and safe, and then he also said, and that's all white people. And I was sort of taken aback, and I wasn't sure what to say, and I struggled, and in doing so, I was silent, and it's a silence that I regret. I could have asked him, so what do you mean by that? And started a conversation. Instead, I allowed what might have been a weed to keep growing. When I came to the urban ministry, staff of color shared stories about encounters with white volunteers. They echo still in the organization, and they're painful, and we're committed to doing better. We've been building a more robust onboarding program for volunteers and staff, one that includes cultural competence training and understanding of Roxbury's history, and the government-sanctioned reasons why our communities are so segregated. White people need to enter communities of color not to fix or help, but with a humility that is born of an understanding of how that injustice was created by design. And we all need to learn to give and receive hard feedback when we say and do things that perpetuate racism and hurt. Every gardener knows that it's best to pull weeds as soon as you see them and they don't disappear on their own. And finally, lesson 5. Truly lasting gardens are not built in a day or a season. When we adopted our new mission statement, it was the end of a multi-year journey. But this new mission is now the beginning of another long journey. It will take more than my own lifetime to complete it. What matters is that we stay the course, learning, stumbling, trying, committed. When George Floyd was killed, Unitarian Universalists flooded the streets to protest. We have to ensure that commitment isn't a fad or a trend that we tire of. Our eyes have been opened. May they remain so. Last summer, after my master gardening course, I again grew tomatoes. I don't know if it was the soil or the summer's heat, but most of my crop was ruined, and it was discouraging. But that failure was an opportunity to learn more. I learned how to improve my soil for next season. In gardening, you need to take the long view. A beautiful garden isn't built in a season. It will take years to learn and do and redo. Years of letting things fill in and blossom, of reading and sharing and trying, of beginning again. The only real mistake is giving up. I am here this morning to invite you to learn more about the work of the Urban Ministry and to support us. In the year ahead, we'll roll out new walking tours in Roxbury to share the stories of that community. Come in for a tour. We're piloting the new partner program with Roxbury Business. Sign up to share your expertise or make a donation to fund it. My colleague, the Annie Stubbs, who's sitting here, is going to be in the social hour afterward with a sign-up sheet, and you can sign up on our mailing list and just learn more about what we're doing. Like next month, we'll have a webinar called Community Conversations, and we'll talk to the leader of Roxbury Community College about how education can close the wealth gap. This past season, my garden did not do all that I wanted it to do. My potato crop was sparse, and you heard about my tomatoes. But I planted bushes of goldenrod for the pollinators that took, and salvia for the migrating hummingbirds that remained deep purple into the autumn. I imagine what's possible if I persevere, and what's possible if we all do that. Keep trying and tending, and never giving up. Amen, and may it be so. I'd invite you to join in singing our closing hymn, number 168, One More Step. I am here this morning to tell you two things. One, you are beloved. And two, your life matters. Go forth remembering these. Go in faith and peace. Amen.